Hello friends, in today's video I'm going to show you how I went from this to this to this to this. So stay tuned, I'm going to show you just how I did it. Okay, so I've got my sketch all ready to go here, very bare bones, very minimal. And this is a scene that I found on my recent excursion to southern Arizona. You know, sometimes I take a picture of a scene and I'm kind of iffy as to if it's going to work as a painting or not, but this one, I immediately knew this is going to be a painting. I just love how the bank of this wash recedes into the distance, and then you've got these cactus sticking up over the top, and then you've got these two chunks of big rock down in the bottom of the wash, and then you've got the sandy texture of the wash itself. It's a very quintessential Arizona scene, and I just love it. It's very simple in a way, but there's also a lot of complexity going on in the bank of the wash that I'm going to need to simplify in a way that makes sense. So that's enough yapping. Let's get into painting. I'm going to be a little bit snuffly and stuffly today because I don't know what's going on, but my allergies are just going nuts right now. Something in the air is just driving my nose crazy, so sorry about that. All right, before I do anything, I'm going to take my kneaded eraser, and I'm going before I do any painting, I'm going to take my kneaded eraser and I'm going to roll it over the pencil work. This is going to get rid of some of that excess graphite without completely erasing the line work, and that'll prevent things from smudging when I wet the paper down. That's why I tend to go quite dark with my pencil lines, so that when I go over it with the kneaded eraser, I can still see the pencil lines. Okay, I think that'll work. Now, I'm going to take this sponge. I'm going to get both sides of the paper wet as evenly as possible. Okay, and now my paper will lay flat without me having to tape it down. And this also gives me more time to work wet into wet in the first wash, which is what we're going to get into now. Painting on Saunders Waterford paper, as I usually do. Okay, so we're going to start with the sky, which is going to be pretty simple today. Cerulean blue, a little bit of cobalt blue. Lavender takes the edge off of the blue. That's too much lavender. Get some more cerulean blue in there. Color mixing is really just going back and forth until you've got something that looks right. Yeah, something like that, kind of a nice light blue. We got some wispy clouds in the sky. I like that texture, that effect, so we'll see if we can get some of that in there. And let's just get going. I've been looking forward to painting this scene ever since I got back from that trip. So it's great to be doing this scene. Painting around just some pretty vague, something like cloud shapes. Letting the pigment kind of run out as it gets towards the horizon. It'll naturally lighten itself up. So, to get that wispy cirrus cloud effect, I'm going to take a paper towel, I'm going to fold it up, going to get it wet, I'm going to wring it out so that it's just damp. Get almost all the water out of it, and then I'm going to take just the edge of it, make a little point, and you can kind of create some nice wispy effects. Just lightly pressing it into the paper. It's really subtle, but it creates just a bit of interest in the sky, if that's what you want. All right, the sky's done. Pretty easy. Now we're going to start toning the rest of the paper. The first wash is all about the lightest values in your scene. So that will usually include the sky and everything that's being lit by the sun. But then also within the shadow area, you can start toning that too. Okay, I need some warm colors. I need some greens. I just grabbed some cadmium yellow, threw it into this sky color here. I think I'm just gonna drop in some greens for these Palo Verde trees, these random bushes. Just get started with toning these areas. I want that green to be a little darker. So I had some green color already on the palette, so I just used that. It's really nice to use color that's already on the palette from your previous painting. I always, or at least I've been doing that lately, is I've been leaving paint on the palette instead of cleaning it off, so that I can mix some really interesting, rich colors in the next painting that I do. First wash is all about abstract shapes, and just big splotches of color that all flow together. I'm not worried about really painting within the lines at this point. That comes in the second and third wash. Mix up some nice warm color for the bottom of the wash and the walls, which are essentially the same color, just the difference is the wall of the wash, the bank, is much of it is in shadow, so you're going to have kind of varying back and forth between warm and cool colors, warm and cool gray. It's kind of just a nice sandy, stony color. It's just burnt umber that I mixed into this dark gray that was on the palette already. See, letting that color bleed right into the green. just throwing color down on the paper, toning it for everything that comes next. Just about, well, a lot of this will get painted over in the second wash, which is for middle value. Throwing some burnt sienna in here. There's a few areas in the bank of the wash where there's a slightly more orange color happening, which I really like, so I'm trying to capture that. There's all kinds of little subtle colors happening in this shadow side of the bank. I'm even seeing some reds, some real subtle reds right back in here. That might look pretty vibrant and intense now, but remember, this is all going to get painted over in the second wash, so I want that red to be able to show through from underneath the paint that I put on top of it. We're just going to keep covering this paper with this color. All right, the first wash is done. Just like that. So I need this paper to dry out completely, and then we will continue with the second wash, which is the middle value shape. Okay, ready to start the second wash here. Got some green mixed up on the palette, and we're going to start with this Palo Verde tree here. Using this really pointy brush, which is perfect for painting Palo Verde trees, which are very wispy, thin. I always have a hard time getting these right for some reason. Not easy to paint these things. Kind of just locating where the two main trunks are, which there's one here and then there's one right here just to the right of it, right there. And then I'm kind of drawing the main branches that I see, and then just I keep branching off smaller and smaller branches from those. I don't like how that one turned out. That's way too fat. I'm painting at an awkward angle over here. I got stuff in the way. We'll cover that up with just some texture. Using the side of my brush just to get some texture here. Palo Verde trees are mostly texture. I guess all trees are, if you think about it. They're just mostly texture. That's what makes them look like trees. Yes, it is in fact a tree, even though it looks more like a bush. That's how it goes with a lot of these desert plants. They tend to look more like bushes than trees because of the way that they grow. They tend to have branches that shoot out from the base in all directions instead of having a long trunk which then branches off more towards the top. And I will probably come back to this in the next wash for the darks and continue adding some darker branches in there. But for now, that should do it. We're going to paint the shadow that Palo Verde is casting. So I need a nice cool gray for that. Grab some cobalt blue, drop that into that brownish mixture that I had on the palette already. Connect that right into the trunks. There is really a lot of detail in this photo, so I'm having to squint my eyes when I look at it in order to simplify things. Now, I should also mention that my goal for the middle value is always connecting everything that falls within the middle value tonal range into one big shape that flows across the entire scene. Taking my time, I'm in no rush. You know, it's interesting, the more advanced I become with painting, the slower I paint. You would think it would be the opposite. Now, the thing that has sped up a lot is my decision making when I'm painting. That is much quicker. It's almost instantaneous. But actually, putting paint on the paper is much more slow and deliberate. And if you're trying to paint loose, which I definitely am, you do need to slow down, which seems counterintuitive. You have to slow down and be very deliberate with where you're putting your brush. You have to know exactly what's going to happen when you put your brush down. And you have to know exactly what the paper is trying to tell you. Is it dry? Is it wet? Is it somewhere in between? Is it too dry, too wet for the effect that you want? What is the effect that you want? Do you know how to get the effect that you want? And these are all things that just take a lot of practice. A lot of practice. I mean, over and over and over again. You have to develop a relationship and a trust with your brush, your paper, the water, and the paint. And you have to understand exactly what's happening with all of those. Mixing up some warmer middle value colors for the side of this bank. We're going to have a lot of room to play around with warm and dark, or rather warm and cool shadows in this painting. Because we've got both happening. And there's cool spots within the warm like that. Little rocks sticking into the side of the bank that are more cool in color. Then the bank itself is more warm, generally speaking. then the cast shadow on the ground is going to be cool. There's so much interesting texture happening in this little bank. And it's, like I was saying before, it is such a quintessential Arizona thing to see. This is what we call a wash here in the desert, or an arroyo, which comes from Spanish arroyo, which just means stream. But in the West, in the American Southwest, that means a dry riverbed, arroyo. Because when it rains, the ground is so dry and desiccated that the water from the rain can't soak into the ground, and so it all stays on the surface and runs in these channels, these washes, and that's how you get flash floods, which are a very real thing and can be extremely dangerous if you're not careful. Trying to find the balance between portraying enough detail to get the point across, but also keeping it simple and elegant and readable. It's a never-ending dance. So this part right here, the shadow color gets cooler again. Up in there. There's a little patch of light right there. That's a cool effect. Let's paint around that. We'll preserve that. See, blending all these colors right into each other. Watercolor's just so good at doing that. It's really incredible to watch it happen. Look at this, it's perfectly blending itself on the paper. Now let's add that beautiful cast shadow from the bank onto the floor of the wash. I want that to be very, very cool. I want it to be even slightly blue to the eye when you look at it. And I'm going a little bit darker, closer to dark value, so that I don't have to paint over the shadow, hopefully, at all. Hopefully I can just leave it as is. I do like my cast shadows to be very dark. I just think it gives a really nice pop. And I did actually sketch in with pencil where that shadow is. I need to get it just right. Shadows are super important as far as creating a convincing illusion of a landscape. You gotta get the angle right, you gotta get the tone right and the value right. Now at this stage you might be thinking to yourself, well, this doesn't look like much of a painting. Just looks like a bunch of random splotches of color, but that's the thing with watercolor. It takes quite a bit of time for the painting to reveal itself to you, but it will. You just gotta keep working it. Don't give up on it. Just keep working it. If you're feeling stressed out, like, oh, this isn't working, maybe you're right, maybe it's not working, but just keep pushing a little farther, and you might surprise yourself that it actually turns out more often than not. At least that's been my experience. Don't give up on your painting too soon. There have been many times where I was just that close to giving up on a painting, and then I forced myself to stay with it, and it ended up turning out amazingly. So just give it time to reveal itself. Don't give up on it too soon. It'll probably turn out, and if it doesn't, use it as a learning experience. Try to figure out what you could do to improve it next time. And you can always try to paint it again. In fact, you should try to paint it again, I would say, in my humble opinion. Yeah. Man, this texture of this rock is just so interesting. That's why I love areas like this, where you just kind of randomly stumble across this amazing geological formation happening. And you see things like this just everywhere here. And every time I'm hiking or running and I cross a wash like this, I just stop and kind of admire it for a second. I just think it's beautiful. All the rock formations, the way that there's little smaller rocks stuck into this bank. I'm going to be telling you a little bit of a story of what happened there geologically. So see how from that shadow color I went straight into some dark green for this Palo Verde tree? All the colors of the middle value are touching and they're connecting across the entire scene. Well, most of it. This piece here is going to be disconnected, but everything else is going to be physically and literally connected. It just creates very powerful scenes if you do that. Alright, just gotta paint this rock and this one here, and we'll be done with the second wash. Some more warm colors. A lot of beautiful texture in this rock that I'm trying to replicate. back to a cool gray for that cast shadow. Now we can start adding in some darks. We're gonna get really dark with this mixture of paint. Really thick paint. It's just cobalt blue, burnt umber. Throw some ultramarine blue in there too to darken it even more. This will really help highlight the texture in the shadow areas of some of these rocks and things. Not trying to get it exactly right, just trying to get close. I had a little moment of panic just there. Just a little one. Where I just kind of stepped back and looked at the whole painting, and I thought, oh, I don't know if this is gonna work, but I'm just gonna keep painting and see what happens. I've come this far, I'm not just gonna stop now. I really think it's just a matter of getting the texture right in this area. And then obviously this ground here needs a lot more texture. This needs more texture up here, so I think it'll be fine. Just gotta keep working it, like I said before. Sometimes it's hard to take your own advice. I guess your own advice is the hardest advice to take. Yeah, it's starting to get there. I really didn't want to give this painting up. I just like this scene too much. Yeah, what's really helping sell this is the darks right at the boundary where the bank meets the cast shadow. Putting some darks right there is helping separate those two elements. If the middle value wash is connecting everything, then the dark wash is about finding ways to actually separate some of these shapes a little more. And adding texture in this area is going to help a ton. So all these little holes and crevices in the rock, I'm just trying to portray some of that without getting too carried away. I mean, I could spend the rest of the day just painting these tiny details, but I need to find a stopping point. We're not there yet, but I'll find a stopping point eventually. This is coming together a little more now. I'm starting to see it. Yeah, that's looking a lot better. Just needed some texture, that's all. I'm gonna keep the stuff back here pretty indistinct. I don't think I'm gonna add that much texture to it. I don't want to draw your eye to that area too much. The darker things are, the more your eye will be attracted to it. Actually, it's the areas of higher contrast that your eye is drawn to, is really what it is. So, as a rule of thumb, the closer an object is to you in the scene, the higher contrast it can be, and then the farther away it is, the lower contrast it is, and that'll help give the illusion of depth on a flat piece of paper. Because that's really what we're doing as artists. We are figuring out how to create the most convincing illusion possible of an entire living, dynamic, three-dimensional world that has movement and depth on a flat piece of paper. We'll come back to that in a minute. I love these scraggly, squiggly branches poking out of the side here. Desert plants always have this super gnarled, rugged look to them. It's a rugged place, that's for sure. Crazy that anything grows here at all, but the Sonoran Desert is, in fact, known as the most biodiverse desert in the world. I think it's a pretty cool place to live and to have grown up. And I've definitely come to appreciate the desert more and more as I've gotten older. I didn't really used to find it that awe-inspiring, but now I definitely do. Alright, it's time to get out a smaller brush again, work on some pretty fine details for some branches and things, some sticks, some twigs, etc. We're getting pretty close to wrapping this painting up. I'm just going to add some highlights in gouache. Just like the face of a rock here or there that's being lit by the sun. Adding just a few tiny spots of extra darks here and there. Just a few. All right, I think that's going to do it for this one. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned something, and I hope to see you on the next one.